Good morning everybody and welcome back to the stream. It is Friday the 5th of March and it is 12:30 because I was ready early and I sat here and I thought, well, I could sit here, you know, for that was a horrible noise, sorry if you heard that. I could sit here for half an hour waiting, or I could just go live, and it turns out I'm in control of this stream and I can in fact just go live. But hello, I hope you've had a good week. I actually have. After I came out of my pain flare, like over the weekend and at the start of the week, fingers crossed, thumbs held, touch wood, it's been okay since. And by okay I mean I'm in a tolerable level of pain again rather than an intolerable one. But yeah, so I've had, as you will know if you were here on Wednesday, I've had both a busy and a very unbusy week. On Wednesday, I got my initial write-up completely finished and handed in. If you missed that stream, I read some of the bits from it out that I didn't write on stream, that I was really pleased with. So that's gone into my supervisor. She's going to be reading it over the next few weeks, which is exciting and terrifying. And we have a meeting on the 25th of March to talk about it. Now, obviously, I'm going to be doing stuff in the meantime, but basically, today I'm doing my reading for my reading group, which is on Monday. Other than that, I'm going to take it easy until Wednesday. I think because I've had so many flares, I'm hoping that several days of resting and relaxing, if I find myself able to do that. If anyone knows like a trick for actually resting and relaxing, let me know, because I don't know how to do those things. But yeah, I'm sort of hoping that will help break me out of that cycle, and also this, you know, it's been a lot of work to get this together, and I think it's good to, you know, reward myself with some rest days. So yeah, what we're going to be doing today, I've got 2 articles to read. So basically my reading group is a medical humanities reading group. So the stuff we read is relevant to my field, but not necessarily, hello Chewinga, it's not necessarily directly relevant to my research that I'm doing. So I do get to read some things that are directly relevant, but I also get to read all sorts of other things, and I find that really useful just to give me an idea of what's going on in my field, what other people are researching, what methodologies they're bringing in, because it's interdisciplinary, like where they're pulling ideas from. And that's the sort of thing that I can then get ideas for, is not necessarily like exactly what they're researching, but how they're researching it and that sort of thing. And that's really useful and interesting, and I just like the people. They're nice. I like them. So I've got 2 articles to read. One of them we're going to read together on stream because it's public, so I can. The other one is not public. So depending on how long this first article takes, I'll either read it on stream without you able to see it, like we've done before, or I will just do it off stream. If this one ends up taking like 2 hours, then I'll do it that way. But if we, you know, whiz through this one in 40 minutes, then I'll do both. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying desperately not to just make it a super short stream so I can go and watch the WandaVision finale before the LEC starts. Friday is an intense day. There's a lot of stuff that happens either on Thursday nights or comes out on Fridays or is on Fridays. You know, it's the busy life of I don't know, watching many things. Cool. So if I get this open, we're just gonna jump straight in. And I want to bring us to there. Oh, hello microphone, you're quite far over. What I might do is, I'm sorry, you're gonna get some, actually let me mute this for a second whilst I move it. There, that's better. You're still going to be able to hear me clearly, but it's not on the screen. So as always, this is our reading setup. I will probably keep it this way round. I think this works best. So here Hello. In the bottom corner you can see me. Here in the top right corner you can see my notes. Obviously you can't read them, but it feels nice that you can see what I'm literally doing with my hands. You can also see the pyjama trousers I'm wearing. Congratulations. You can see the vast amount of notes I took for my induction review, where I got so overwhelmed that I literally just wrote write out list of questions, find list. I don't even remember what that means. I think it's something to do with my research questions, but I don't know what find list means. Check RDP form, which is my research and development program form that I have to send to my supervisor, and then Jan and Feb supervision records, which is what I did on Monday. So as you can see, I made many notes, and I definitely wasn't so anxious and overexcited that I failed to take notes during our discussion. It was mostly me talking at them anyway, so I don't think it's too much of a problem because I've still got all that stuff in my head. But yes, in the middle we have the PDF we're reading today. I know it's quite small, but the alternative is that I constantly have to, like, if I zoom it in here, I've got to it just goes under my face. So I've sort of decided that actually the best thing to do is put it actually at this, which still cuts off a little bit, but not as much. This is the zoom I would be reading on normally. It is 5 pages, but as always, like 2 of those pages are citations, so actually it's 3 pages. And it is called On the Need for an Ecologically Dimensioned Medical Humanities. So my expectation going into this is that it's going to be about how ecology relates to health and the fact that we're not looking at it very much. That's my assumption. So you can see here I've already written that title, the name of the author, and exactly where it's from. So all the information I would need for the citation, which means when I don't go and copy it into my citation software, which is I use Zotero, which is Zotero. I don't have to go pull the article up again and get all of the citation information. I've already got here the name of the journal, what issue it is, what pages it is, what year it is, and it's actually from 2021. It's published this year. I think it was first published, it says here, on December 2020, but then formally published. It's in this issue. So yeah, we're gonna get started, and we're gonna find out together what this is actually about, because beyond knowing the general theme, that's as much as I've looked at. And what we're also going to try to do, I've got my timer here today. If you've not seen my little timer before, this is like a kitchen timer, but it's one where I can set any amount of time really easily. I can just turn the dial. If you turn the dial fast, it does minutes. If you turn it slowly, it does seconds. And it will beep when the time is up. So we're going to try and vaguely Pomodoro this, just to make sure I actually take breaks, because I'm terrible at that. At least that's the plan. So I'm going to put this down here so you will just be able to see it. Start the timer. If you want to read the article along with me, I'll give you the link for it before I start the timer. In fact, you should be able to read it at this address. For it is free. I don't know why I said it in that joyful tone. Joyously have this article about ecology and medicine in the medical humanities. Alright, let's get going. So, increasing calls from medical professionals and scholars suggest an urgent need for better and more widespread understandings of the ecological dimensions of health. Don't worry, I'm not going to read the entire article aloud. I find it helps if I read the abstract aloud, because then I'm actively doing something with the information. Such calls have included 2 recent Lancet special commissions on impact of climate change on health, recognition by senior figures from the World Health Organization and United Nations of relationships between human impacts on the natural world and disease pandemics, with some suggesting prevention of future pandemics may require a radical reassessment of modernity's relationship with the natural world. Among the medical humanities as a whole, however, calls for better and more widespread understandings of the ecological dimensions of health have not always been as prominent or urgently expressed as they might be. Okay, so it's sort of giving us some background on the fact that it's a current topic in medicine and health generally, but that it's a bit less in the medical humanities. This paper, which presumes there is an urgent need for better and more widespread understandings of the ecological dimensions of human health, draws on ecological public health, which they've already said there is research into, and other models to propose an ecological revisioning of our conceptions of health and the medical humanities. Or health and, it might mean health and medical humanities, like health humanities and medical humanities, because if you are familiar, why don't I throw up our medhums command, by the way, because that mentions that both terms are used. I'm not particularly tethered to either term. You'll find I will say medical humanities more often, but I completely understand the reasons, and I support the reasons for saying health humanities, so I will tend to use both, although I'm not like a strict adherent of health humanities. In ways that challenge some contemporary assumptions about health, well-being and the good society. Indeed, once we begin to heed what Eco-critic is an amazing title. Eco-critic Tim Morton terms the ecological thought, we may discover few areas of healthcare and the humanities remain untouched by its implications. That makes sense to me, because like one of the things that the medical humanities does is shows how much like sociological stuff influences medicine and economical stuff. I went to say ecological, but I mean economics, and history and politics and all sorts of things. So it makes sense to me that ecological concerns would be part of that as well. Especially right now with the growing realization that we've completely fucked the planet over. With glowing recognition. I've been paid to do voice work, guys. And it took me many takes. With growing recognition that the fate of global human health and the fate of the biosphere are inextricably intertwined, yeah, that would be the aforementioned fucking over, the project of a more ecologically dimensioned medical humanities appears both timely and urgent, also potentially late. What is illness narratives? So illness narratives is anything that is a story of illness. So that might be something like an autobiography of a person who has had an illness in their life. That's often called autopathography, which just means illness narrative, illness autobiography. But yeah, that's what it basically is. But it's not necessarily like that memoir style of thing. It can be all sorts of things that you can get. Fantasy fiction that's an illness narrative, for example, or video games that are illness narratives, and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's the story of a person's illness, and it's generally the story of a particular individual's illness rather than like it's not so much like a historical, like this is the history of the Black Death, for example. It would be this is the story of one person who got the Black Death. That's a really grim example to use. I'm sorry. It was the first thing that came into my head when I was like, lots of people. I mean, I'm glad I said Black Death rather than COVID. But yeah, that's what illness narratives are. I can't remember if I have a command for that. I don't think I do. Oh, but it's in the medical humanities thing, isn't it? Yeah. I should probably have one for illness narratives as well. I'll think about that. Where did I get up to? Oh, such a project may represent a significant opportunity for the medical humanities and a significant responsibility. Cool. Yeah, that all makes sense. Do I want to make any notes on that? I probably should do. Just so I remember, like, generally what the article is about. Although, that's quite a good summary. I could just write the abstract is good. So not much discussion of ecological dimension in medhums thus far. Growing discussion in general sciences, I guess I'll put. Yeah, that's all I need really. Okay, so I'm gonna. This is also I can't scroll down much more because it'll like jump us onto the next page, but you can just about see it. It's quite small anyway. I don't imagine anyone's reading on the screen along with me. I'll drop the link again into the chat in a bit. Oh, this is really just repeating the anthropogenic. I'm not familiar with that word, but in this context, I'm assuming it means human-derived. Let's look it up. Yeah, originating in human activity, and it's generally used related to the environment, says Google. I'm gonna write that word down actually, because that's a good. There we go. So I've just written the definition of the word there. Okay, so this is starting to expand a bit beyond the repeating the abstract. So it's saying there's been some support for Extinction Rebellion. Drawn attention to relationships between human impacts on the natural world and human. Yeah. The coronavirus is a warning to us to mend our broken relationship with nature. Yeah, so that's a really good quote. These calls and others remind us that any efforts which conceptualize or compartmentalize health and healthcare apart from or away from their ecological contexts are increasingly implausible. I'm going to write that down because that's a really good quote. And I think that's something that, like, in all of the articles that I've read that have been published within the past year that relate to any kind of public health concern have understandably mentioned COVID-19, and a lot of the mention of it, unless it's like directly about COVID itself, and even sometimes then, is very much like I want to say leaning into, but I don't mean leaning into, more like acknowledging the pandemic as a source of change and as a catalyst for change, often change that was necessary before, and like the complexities around that. So I'm gonna write this bit down, and that makes sense, right? Oh, any efforts which Conceptualize or compartmentalize. Are there articles discussing the reluctance in the public for vaccination and precaution in social distancing compared to historical data? I know there's definitely discussion around it. There is obviously you've got like the anti-vax movement, which is particularly strong in the US. It's also present here in the UK. And I know there's definitely journalistical articles discussing that sort of thing. It's not my field of research, so I've not come across a lot of detail. The thing I know a bit more about is related to the racial dimension in vaccination anxiety, which is related to the racism present in healthcare as a whole, and the like systemic racism and mistreatment of especially Black people and Indigenous people, but basically all BIPOC people, and they are understandably nervous about being vaccinated because they've been systemically treated badly. That's something I'm familiar with from previous work. I've done research into chronic pain, and there's a racism dimension to chronic pain as well, in addition to a misogynist one. I was looking at the misogynistic and the gender side of it specifically, because I was looking at chronic pain in women, but basically women and especially Black people, but any person of colour, are much more likely, I found, were much more likely to have their pain dismissed as psychological. So they would be referred to psychological treatment or ignored or not given painkillers as strong as a white man. And that's just one example of the racism present in medicine. How are minorities compared to native populace in the national healthcare like the UK? They're definitely not that great off. They're not. There is a lot of racism here in the UK as well. I'd say just as much as there is in the US. It definitely extends into medicine as well. It includes in national healthcare as well. It being private healthcare in the US doesn't really make a difference in that context. Yes, fat phobia definitely also plays a factor, especially because you will find higher rates of obesity in different races. So then that's just another kind of prejudice that is added on top of it. And that intersection of prejudices and of bigoted behaviour combine to make the situations for those people even worse. It's particularly terrible. It's definitely a factor as well. And again, this is I know there is discussion about all of this. I can't cite you anything in particular, but you won't have to look that hard to find stuff about the about vaccinations and people being reticent about it and the racial dimension to it. I know I read an article about it, but I can't remember where it was from. And I know it's really good as well, which is annoying. Conceptualize or compartmentalize. I've got to get this quote written down. I've only got 5 minutes left. I feel like I've not done very much. I've talked a lot though, but which is fine. You're welcome to still ask me questions. It's not a problem. From the ecological context. Cool. Oh, I need to write what page that's on. Okay. Okay, so this has a quote from someone in the NHS's Sustainable Development Unit, which is not something I've ever heard of before, who says, addressing such problems is about framing and changing the narrative of our conceptualizations of healthcare. And reframing things is a really strong theme in the medical humanities, and the power that reframing things can bring. And that's definitely very present in a lot of different parts of medhums. Okay, and then it's got a few examples here of different things that have been done related to medhums and the environment. Calls for better and more widespread understandings of the ecological dimensions of health have not always been as prominent or urgently expressed as they might be amongst the medical humanities as a whole. Wow. A search within medical humanities, which is this is the journal this is from, and it's like, unsurprisingly, because it's called Medical Humanities, it's the main medical humanities journal. It's far from the only place that medical humanities journal articles get published. A lot of things go into like more specific places, but I'd say like a solid half of all of the articles that I read are from this journal, and it's saying there was only one hit for ecology, environment, climate change, or eco-crisis. Wow. And that's some broad terms. What are your plans after a PhD? Any thoughts on a postdoc? Yes, I want to go into a career into academia. I have no idea what I want to do for a postdoc, but I can tell you I do want to do postdoctoral work as well, and to stay in academia. I know that's very hard to do, especially right now. There's a lot of precarity. Is a huge problem in academic jobs. I'm very fortunate that I'm not required to earn money to survive, because my husband is able to support both of us. But that's a huge privilege, and it's one that not a lot of people have. A lot of people in academia are on really tenuous contracts that can just disappear at any time, and do disappear at any time, and they're horribly overworked and given terrible like job benefits and things, and treated very badly. Postdocs you can earn a good amount. It's not necessarily, and there are problems in the amounts people are paid as well, especially in racial disparity, and if you are disabled like me, there is a disparity there as well. But it's the precarity of it that's the problem. It's the fact that at any point you can lose your job, and that's just it, and that's just it's not accepted by unions. And I will say I am a member of a union that is currently working to fight against that precarity, especially, and the issues of racism and ableism and other prejudices present in like the academic system. Yeah, it's a big problem, and I'm very fortunate to be able to go in that knowing I'm not risking myself. Obviously I'm risking stress, but I'm already very stressed, so okay, so that one hit on close to the spectrum refers only to a technological environment, so an artistically designed multi-sensory environment rather than a natural one. Wow. Ooh. Hi Sahinia. I hope you're doing well. Right. I should put a timer on so we take a 10-minute break. That's 10 minutes 10 seconds. That'll do. I'll do that there so you can see. Yeah, we're not very far in, but I have done a lot of talking, and again, it's totally fine to ask me questions whilst I'm reading. It actually helps me, because I can, especially with articles like this, I can get frustrated with them if it takes me a while to ingest the information. So actually having distractions is kind of helpful. Just sit for hours listening to me talk. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so and also actually, when you consider how like dense journal, because of this formatting, I hate this formatting, by the way, it's really annoying. Anytime I want to, like, where I've written this quote down, I didn't actually bother. What I usually do, what I will usually do is I'll write where on the page it is, because otherwise I'll come to, like, I'll have a quote and I'll be like, oh cool, it's on page 4, and then you've got like 3 separate columns of information, and there's so much text on there, it's just really annoying to, I mean, I understand why they do it, but it's annoying. And also, I hate the giant paragraphs of doom that you get in academic writing. Just make it easier to pass, please. This is just going to be 10 minutes of me ranting about formatting in academic publishing now. And it's a standard. It's not this one journal doing it. But yeah, it's just something that annoys me. What was... Oh wow, we've been here 40 minutes already. Wow, that really flew past. Also, I feel like 10 minutes is a really long time for a break. I'm ready to keep going. Maybe I'll just keep going. Should we just keep going? We get breaks naturally by the fact that we end up talking. I think that's fine. I don't think that's a problem. I don't feel like I need to... I'll make sure that I actually, like, take a proper break where I get up and move around an hour in. But we'll just keep going for now. Okay. So, I don't know if I can... I can't show you the words that are under here, but it's urgent and widespread, which you can kind of see. Okay, so it's based on some funded research. The Arts and Humanities Research Council is one of the places that a lot of medical humanities research gets funded by here in the UK, as well as the UKRI, although that's controversial right now because they've done a lot of... Funding bodies haven't been great to their postgraduates. Let's say that. I think that's the polite way to put it. With the pandemic specifically. Especially consider if you were like in your 3rd year of a PhD last year and suddenly you were trying desperately to finish your thesis and prepare for your viva and a pandemic happened. I mean, I was finishing a master's degree and that was bad enough. So gosh, I don't know how people coped. A lot of people, I think, just have done an extra year, but they've not had funding for it. I should keep reading rather than just chattering. Finding 3 areas in which green thinking. Yeah. Okay, so this is saying that we've got to not only think of it as an urgent crisis, but also an urgent health opportunity. And then it's going to think about how, with an ecologically informed view, we can challenge some of our assumptions about nature, science, and reality. That sounds exciting. Yeah, and then that's just a repeat of that. That's one of the bits from the beginning again. Okay. 3 areas of progress towards ecological thinking and health. Okay, so we're now thinking in terms of systems rather than molecules. So how things work as a whole rather than how the smallest parts work. Systems thinking reminds us that the relationships between elements in a system can be as important as the elements themselves, and that a complex system cannot be fully understood by analysis of its constituent elements alone. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So you can't, for example, you can't understand a hospital's function by understanding what a doctor does, what a nurse does, what an orderly does, that sort of thing. You need to understand also the relationships between all of those people in order to fully understand the function of a hospital. And that's a really simple example as well. Okay, I think I've heard the term emergent properties before and not known what the fuck it meant. So I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write down what emergent properties is, and then I'm also going to put moving from... I'm going to say molecular understanding. I think I'll know what that means. System-based. I went to write systemic, which is that's something entirely different. It feels like it should be the right word, and yet it is not. Moving from molecular understanding to system-based. Importance of relations between parts, not just their sum. And then emergent properties are properties of complex systems that cannot be reduced from reductionist analysis of system elephants. I'm doing so badly at talking today. The system elephants. Okay, so I'm just going to actually write that down as a quote, because I think that's the easiest way to... I don't think I can reduce that to a better explanation. I think I just lose the meaning. Reductionist analysis of system elements. Okay. Is increasingly recognised in healthcare and its subfields. We're on page 2. Oh wait, we said it was only 3 pages, so actually we're quite far through. If we can get to halfway through by an hour in, which we should do, then that's great. That's on track to do it in 2 hours, which is my normal stream length time. I've done a few shorter ones recently because where I've had a lot of flares, I've had trouble being on stream for long periods of time. But I'm hoping we can have like back to the normal length today and from now on with the research I'm moving into doing, because it'll be much easier to schedule things for the stream that I know are going to take that long, or to have more there that works for doing on the stream. Stop babbling. Okay, this makes sense. So the importance of systems thinking to an ecologically dimensioned healthcare lies in its ability to help us understand ways in which systems of health and healthcare are embedded within larger systems, the Earth's ecosystems and biosphere on which all terrestrial life depends. So where you're thinking just of that hospital, you're now thinking of that hospital both as a system itself and as an element within the system that is Earth. Systems thinking is not always easy. It may require considerable expansion of the boundaries of time and space within which any particular issue is conceptualized. Yeah, because you're Yeah, so it's giving the example of overuse of antibiotics, and I don't know if you may not be familiar with this, but if the more we use antibiotics, the more our systems become resistant to them. It's not the only drug that's like that. So, for example, when I at the end of, hold on, I've got to pull a number out of my head. 2019. At the end of 2019. When my pain started getting super severe, I was put on opioid-based medication. And one of the problems with opioid-based painkillers is that the more you take them, the more resistant your body becomes to them, and then the more of them you have to take to get the same effect. Now, as it happened, opioid-based painkillers don't work on my kind of pain anyway, so there was no point to me taking them. But that's another example of you've got to think longer term, because in that moment you're like, okay, we need to reduce this person's pain, we should give them morphine, and clearly you're not going to stop and go, whoa, we probably don't want to give them morphine, because that means that 3 generations from now their great-great-grandchildren won't be effective on them. And in that moment you're not going to think like that. We need that's what they're saying about it being hard to think over those boundaries of time and space. 1 second. Oh. You can again see the secret that I often sit cross-legged on my chair, and whenever you see me doing that, it's because I'm having to pull myself up. I'm quite short, but in order to have my chair at a height that works for my table and for everything, it's high, and if I have my legs hanging down, they don't touch the floor. It takes some effort to get me into the chair. Okay. I'm going to make a note about health systems. I can't write today either. Health systems as element within biosphere system. And then difficulty of systems thinking. E.g. Antibiotics overuse. Cool. Four broad overlapping models have dominated the ways in which public health has been conceptualized hitherto. Oh my god. The sanitary environmental model, which focused on the health of populations and their physical environments. Yeah. Biomedical models, so that's thinking about it in terms of the biology of medicine. Socio-behavioural approaches, focusing on social marketing and nudge approaches to altering behaviours. So that's thinking about things like anti-smoking campaigns. As a dimension of public health and a model of public health. Techno-economic approaches, which focus on economic growth and techno-scientific innovation as key to improving public health. Okay, so that, I think you could probably put the pharmacological revolution in that sort of a sphere, because it's a scientific, a techno-scientific innovation. Because medication is a technology, effectively, it's just a biological one. And so there's Lang and Rayner, so I'm going to make some notes about this because this seems pretty important. So ref Lang and Rayner, dimensions of. And then I'll just put a really quick list of them. So that was sanitary, environmental, biomedical, Socio-behavioural. And techno-economic. It's a lot of really long words. Where was I? Okay, this is a long quote. I keep going. The problem is I'm leaning forward to read it and then you can't see it. I'll try not to. What's opponent integrates? Okay, so they're saying it has not only a scientific evidential dimension to this model, but that there's also a sociological one, highlighting the role of interest groups and debate across society, not just within restricted scientific circles. I think Darwin and Wallace, Beveridge or Roosevelt, big thinking about the nature of life, good society's order and change. So like a philosophical dimension to it as well, but yeah, a philosophical dimension. Fifthly, this is an overtly interdisciplinary and multi-actor model. It celebrates that public health requires action on multiple fronts and embraces the argument familiar in the 19th century that public health action requires a public health movement. Okay, I'm gonna make a couple of notes on that before it gets into countering evidence-based medicine, because that's a whole other rabbit hole. So this is saying that ecological public health and it's worth saying that at this point I'm not doing a lot of thinking. So I've just realised something, I'll come back to it. I'm not doing a lot of thinking about my opinion of the piece, because that is what we tend to cover in the reading group. So where I'm reading right now, I'm really just reading to understand the arguments being presented and understand the information being presented. I've been discussing it a bit contextually in terms of other things that I know, but mostly in order to understand them. It's in my reading group, what we will then tend to do is pick apart any weaknesses we see in the arguments, any thoughts we have about it, and that sort of thing. So that's the reason I'm not doing that right now. If I was reading this for my PhD research, I would be doing that, assuming that was the reason I was reading it. There are many reasons to read, and the thing I just remembered is that we were going to do this with my reading training techniques, reading techniques form. As you can see, I've not done that. We can do that next week. So this is relates to social values, complexity and system dynamics. Then we had a philosophical dimension and philosophical scope and scale, I think is a good way to put it. Interdisciplinary. I say this word all the time. Interdisciplinary. Thank you. I put an extra syllable in that one. I said it, didn't I? I said interdisciplinary instead of interdisciplinary. Even when I thought I'd said it correctly, I'd said it wrong. Wow. I'm tired. I've continued to get up at 7:30 every day this week, and I fucking hate it. But I think I am sleeping better. I think I'm sleeping better. So at least it's working. And then I'm going to put action on multiple fronts, because I like that. And then not just evidence-based. because the next sentence up here was, the ecological public health model thus reminds us of the inadequacy of relying on evidence-based medicine alone. So basically all of our medicine right now is based on evidence-based medicine. And there's a lot of other approaches that are being, especially in the medhums, are being argued for. Okay. Oh, hello. I found the word mental health. With mental health disorders arguably responsible for the largest proportion of the global burden of disease, and yet so little of the funding. Throw that one out there. It is the most common form of illness and the least funded in most countries. Not in every country. Certainly in the UK and the US, very badly funded. Which we're going to find out just how badly funded it is as the pandemic ends and all of the people who have developed mental health issues as a result of the pandemic suddenly find that there's a 6-month queue to find out that you can't get the help. Apparently when I'm angry I just smile. I'm very bad at being angry. I don't have a lot of experience with it. It's the emotion I find hardest, because often it's like anger on my own behalf and I don't really have the capacity to like value myself in that way. Anyway, some commentators are beginning to suggest that our relationships with non-human nature may have profound implications for our mental health. This is interesting. Nature connectedness approaches to mental health. This is especially interesting to me because one of the things that I find comforting and I have sought as a form of comfort over the years is being in nature. I spent a period of time where I was practicing and exploring paganism, primarily based on the connection I felt, especially to woodland. I'm a wood elf, everyone. I'm very much an elf. And I think I'm a wood elf, because I would just like enjoy exploring forests, and I found it really peaceful. It was one of the few times that I felt I was able to not have my headphones on when I was out alone, and it's just a lovely thing, and obviously I've not been able to do it. The last time I went out near nature was with my family at a point last year where we'd managed to meet up safely, and I had such a bad pain flare that I almost had to be carried back to the car because we'd walked so far, but it was such a lovely, we were walking along a river, and it was so, I love rivers and lakes and water as well, and it was such a lovely river. I just felt I felt like that peace was there and I couldn't quite feel it. So yeah, this is interesting to me because it's definitely something that I have found in my own experience. Look, reconnection to the natural world, whether walks through gardens, animals, nature walks outside, or nature brought indoors, not only alleviates these symptoms. I've also got a load of plants in my room, by the way. Also brings a larger capacity for health, self-esteem, self-relatedness, social connection, and joy. Yeah, and the idea of nature replacing, this is called I love this phrasing actually, a pathological sense of inner deadness. Like that, it's sort of a related to dissociation sort of thing, and that it can work, nature connectedness can work to give you something to replace that, to be a connection to the force of life effectively. It's so lovely to hear this put like in academic terms. It's one of those things that I think often sounds silly when you try and explain it. Yeah, in addition to the growing number of empirical studies into mental health impacts, some psychologists argue that the presumption that mind in here and nature out there are separate realms has been an illusion and a cultural construction, though a remarkably persistent one in Western culture. Okay, so I'm going to make some notes on nature connectedness. Sorry, I just love this. Oh, this is page 2. I really like this this part. I'm not going to write all the examples down. I'm just going to make a note that there are 3 examples of how nature can impact mental health as a positive force, because that I think that's all really good, and I could write it all out, but it's probably easier just to write this thing is good. And then a note on in here and then out there as separate is cultural construct, especially right now. Like, when have we thought about in here and out there is dangerous more ever than right now? Reframing eco-crisis as a healthcare opportunity. Oh wow, this is going to be bleak. It can be difficult to avoid a feeling of or tone of apprehension, with recent reports from the IPCC, for instance, suggesting that there may only be 12 years for humankind to undertake the significant societal transformations necessary to forestall the worst effects, including health effects, of runaway climate change. But terrifying people with predictions of dire ecological catastrophe may not be the most effective strategy available for us for motivating people to adopt more pro-environmental behaviours. I mean, that has certainly been tried, and people still think climate change is made up. So yeah, sure, let's try something else. I think it's important to say that I think the terror is not wrong. You know, that I don't think they're arguing that the terror is not valid or correct. More that there are other strategies. Climate change is not made up. And I hope you're joking. Okay, now I know you're joking. And if you walk like right to the edge of the Earth and you peer down, can you see the giant space tortoise underneath that the Discworld is floating on? I mean, the Earth is floating on. This may be a reference that you may not get, but okay. So Townsend is helping people to imagine a better future is more effective than scare tactics. It's a teleporting portal at the 2 ends. You sort of go far enough into the ocean, and then you just end up in more ocean, or more ice if you've gone north or south. It should work that telling people facts about climate change would change behaviour, but it doesn't. I know I need to take a break in a minute. Yeah. It's like oh god, what's the film called? Fuck, what is this film called? It's gonna go into my head before I manage to read it. Is it The Truman Show? It's like The Truman Show, except instead of being a wall made of paper, you just keep going. Okay, so this is saying that the Lancet Commission tried to shift it from talk of catastrophe to a we can fix this. So a reframing from negative to positive, basically. So the 2009 report found it to be the biggest global health threat of the 21st century, it being climate change. Central finding of the 2015 report is that tackling climate change could be the greatest global health opportunity of the 21st century. Oh, that's really cool, because that's like a direct example of the reframing of climate change and global health. So this is page 2, Lancet reports. Example of reframing doom into opportunity. Some of those health co-benefits include improved diet, reducing red meat consumption reduces CO2 emissions and is better for health. It is. And actually I know more and more people doing that now. I mean, I'm vegan, so I've definitely reduced my red meat consumption. Improved air quality from reduced burning of fossil fuels and driving less, can reduce CO2 emissions while increasing physical exercise. Yep. Oh, this is cool. Right, so in this big quote block here, is saying that we completely need to reconceptualize how we think about health, and we need to think about health not just like the physical body or our mental well-being, but as, do we have a house and somewhere to live? Do we have a job or education or a fulfilling role in our community? Do we have social connection and community? Do we have access to services, like health services, or any other service that we would need to support us? Because then it's about social care, it's about healthcare, it's about welfare. It includes culture and libraries and all those other things that make life worth living. If you take that as your concept of public health or community health or holistic health or health in the broader sense, then it's absolutely clear that public health is by far the best investment we could make in local, meaningful, resilient, sustainable communities where it's just a much better place to live. That's so cool. Okay. I mean, I don't think getting to that point would be particularly easy, but I do think it's correct. So who's that from? David Pension. Wasn't he quoted earlier? I think he might have been. He might have been, I think he's quoted in the abstract. And then I'll put page 3, reframing. I'm interested now to think about what this reframing means in terms of global mental health, and I'm giving that in air quotes because there are some issues with how global mental health is conceptualized, which is that it's often conceptualized as people in certain countries do not have global health and global mental health. How do we deliver it to them? When in fact there's loads of health systems in place I went to a conference last year that had a keynote by a woman who does research into healthcare and health systems in, is it Malawi? I've got all my notes for it in here, I think. Yeah, it is Malawi. And part of their health system, for example, is that when, let's say, someone has to go into hospital and have surgery, there is that they'll be taken home, and then there are groups of women who come to the house and they're singing as they walk to the house in celebration of, and effect kind of like prayers for the person's health, hymns for the person's health. And they come in and they bring food and drink and any like gifts for the person to help look after them. They do things like cleaning and anything that the person needs, and sing for them and bring them joy, and then they sing as they're leaving as well. That's healthcare. And I think that's better recognised in this conceptualisation, because because you've made community one of the 4 pillars and joy one of the fundamental bases of your conceptualisation of public health. It's much easier to understand something that it's very different to what would happen here in the UK, for example. Because that's people within the community doing that. It's not necessarily like family members or things like that. And it's very much community based and community driven. And it's much easier to conceptualize that under this other way of thinking than in our current way of thinking, which is that healthcare is in the hospital. And that once you've left the hospital, that's it, you're fine, you're done, you've had all the healthcare you need. Maybe you'll see a GP. So I think that's really interesting to think about. As for pillars, and I'll just quickly put home, work, social, and then services. Yeah, so this is saying that greening healthcare, so making healthcare ecologically sustainable, isn't lessening health opportunities. It's not because a lot of the way we think about environmental work is in terms of reduction, right? You reduce the amount of red meat you're eating, you reduce the amount of fossil fuels you're using. But this is saying actually we can improve the ecological impact of healthcare by doing more, but just thinking about things differently, and that more being something different. We're nearly done. I will take the break that I said I was going to take an hour in. We're an hour and a quarter in now. So I will be just a few minutes. I will play you some ads whilst we're out. That's to get rid of pre-rolls for anyone coming in. Sorry, I know ads, but it will just be 1 minute of ads, and hopefully then people won't get them as they're coming in. So I will see you in just a few minutes. If I can find the pre-write back screen, there it is. Okay, hello. I am back. Thank you for bearing with my ads. It means that it's only for 20 minutes, but it means that, you know, there's some time during which people will come in, and there's nothing worse. I mind getting ads when I'm watching like a VOD way less than ads when I first come to a channel. When I come to a channel, I want to see the person stream. You know, I want to either know if I want to watch them or I want to see where in the stream I've come into, and it's just frustrating. But then for a lot of streams, having them midway through is even worse. So yeah, complicated beast. Okay, yeah, nearly done. To what extent might an ecologically dimensioned medical humanities challenge commonplace assumptions of modernity? If environmental problems are an urgent threat to global health, why do healthcare issues so often continue to be compartmentalised and conceptualised apart from and away from their ecological context? That's the phrasing they used earlier. According to Pension, one of the cultural central challenges is we're so addicted to what we currently know that we don't have the vision to see that it could be much better. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard, right, to imagine the world being that fundamentally different. Or it might be, you might find it easy to imagine it, but imagining it in a way that's like planning and how we would get to that. Like, I can imagine a society that's like that description, but that doesn't mean I can imagine transforming our society to that. Other than by changing the government quite radically. You know, changing who's in power, for example, to someone else. Task of unpicking that burden of what we currently know is a profound one, which may require challenges to some of our most cherished assumptions. The same cultural influences which led to the increasing mechanisation of our own human self-understanding also led to the degradation of our sensuous understandings of and responses to the natural world. Oh, okay, right. I've just realised what the example is. I'm sorry that I've had that on screen for a bit. We're going to continue reading, but I'm going to give you a content warning that the example that is used is related to sexual assault, and I'm very sorry that was on the screen without me knowing. I did read through, but I did not see that bit. I did skim through, but I didn't see that bit. So we are going to carry on reading. It is not the topic of the article, but it is used as an example. I will give you a thumbs up and let you know in chat when we are past that point. It may still be on the screen, but yeah, if you have difficulty with any discussion around sexual assault, then please make yourself safe first. Okay, that's more important than listening to me talk. Okay, so putting this argument in its starkest terms, psychologists remind us that often a necessary precursor to an act of rape against another person is that the perpetrator, usually male, objectify their victim first. By objectify we mean rendering the victim an it, by the psychological act of withdrawing sympathy and denying value, autonomy and dignity to the victim. Now, when someone objectifies a person in this way, we understandably feel horror. But when we objectify non-human nature in this way, as the widely accepted scientific picture of nature and reality has done for much of the past 300 years, many of us do not even flinch. We call it rape when we objectify a person, but when we objectify nature, we call it science. I guess I'm just trying to think about what I don't disagree with that argument. It is a really stark example to use. And interestingly, it has some relationship to how we have talked about nature in the past. So historically, right, there is a conception of, we call it Mother Nature. Lots of cultures have conceptions of nature that are personified, embodied as some form, that relate to nature as a force that you discuss in a way as if it has some kind of agency. It certainly exerts as strong an effect upon the world as we do, and therefore I can understand wanting to relate to it in the same way. And there has previously, in all of that, been discussion about the rape of the earth, and of Mother Nature, and I think especially because we've generally always, in this culture is at least, personified nature as a female force. So like in terms of things like oil mining and that sort of thing. I don't think you say mining when it's oil, but that's a common metaphor that is used in relation to nature. And it's interesting to me that doesn't mention that you've used that image and not like discussed that at all. I'm gonna make a note of that. So uses objectification example of no reference to Mother Nature concept and I'm gonna hold off the thumbs up until we're on the next page, because I don't want to welcome people back to safety only to have it still be on the page. So I've not forgotten, but that's why I've not done that yet. Okay, so it's saying it's alienative. It separates us. It estranges us from nature. And other ways of thinking continue to do that. Politics of ecology has often overlapped with the politics of feminism, I can speak, since both have perceived the patriarchal and commonly masculinist aspects of objectification. I read an article about this. I read or a book. What was the book we read? Hold on. My notes will be in here. It was in one of these courses, and it was about like the history of images and of objective. Which course was it in? Was it in the first term? Was it? It wasn't in that week, was it? No. Sorry, bear with me a minute, because I'm convinced that yes, it was Natural Facts: A Historical Perspective on Science and Sexuality, and the idea of so there's a load of like conceptual binaries historically, okay, like male and female. Nature and mind are often seen as opposites. Body and mind are also seen as opposites. Nature and culture are also seen in that sort of duality. And this was, it was about objectivity. Because this is going to sound like it's really unrelated. There were people historically who were drawing like scientific images of plants. Yeah, I promise you this is related. And they were like, the diagrams you get of different plants. But they were drawing them and they weren't what the plant actually looked like. They were what the it was the artist's conception of it. It wasn't like not photorealistic in terms of like the style of drawing, but like it literally didn't look like the plant. But that was it was a scientific drawing of it, and it was a style that, sorry, I punched the microphone by the way, a style that loads of people used. You have a question? Ask me the question. Yeah, and public and private is another duality as well. I'm gonna put my bookmark in this. That's where I got up to with notes though. No, I'm gonna put my bookmark in this page because I'm gonna need that. Yeah, that made me think of that straight away, which is sort of related to that thing I said was missing, is that concept of Mother Nature and of the abuse of Mother Nature. Why won't countries unite together when it comes towards promoting health? Oh my goodness, there are so many reasons for that. There are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, to an extent, some people do. Obviously, there's the World Health Organization, and organizations like that. There's the EU has a lot of stuff related to health, and I know that's a complicated thing to say as someone from the UK. I remain European. I refuse to accept that I'm not. Even though I'm not now. It's really complicated because the way different cultures and different countries, and so in that sense, consider culture and religion the same thing, because effectively religion is a pillar within culture. So different cultures have different takes on health. Chinese medicine, for example, is much more holistic based than our way of thinking in the UK. In the UK and the US, and I think in Europe, a lot of Europe, though maybe not all of it, we're very evidence-based in our health research. So things have to be proven before we will do anything based on them, for example. And that we are very specific about the ways things can be proven, which makes our research very narrow. And one of the things that the medical humanities tries to do is sort of counter that a bit. And that contrasts a lot with the way other cultures think about it. Think of that example from earlier about Malawi healthcare, where it's community-based, because a lot of the world is very privatised in comparison, and then a lot of the world is not. There's also the problem you've got with global health movements, where you've got the Western world, or the global north as it's sometimes called. Basically none of the ways we have of talking about the global north and the global south and the Western world and the non-Western world are good. So I try and use them all interchangeably in the hope that maybe I'm not being terrible. If anyone ever comes across a term for us to say, I definitely don't say first world and third world, because that's fucking awful. But in that duality, you have a power imbalance, both in perception and in actuality. So global health has the problem that we talked about earlier of the rich countries delivering like the messiahs they are, healthcare unto the poor unfortunate souls. This is bullshit. All of those countries have really good healthcare systems. They're just community based and they look different to our healthcare systems. They are still healthcare systems. And that difference and that disparity is why it's so hard to get people to work together in terms of promoting health, because we all have different ideas about how health should be promoted and how health should be conceived. And this argument here, like this quote up here, oh, you can't see my, there you go, you've got my mouse pointer now. This quote up here, where they had those 4 pillars of health, of public health, are much more holistic than our currently it's very segregated, right? Like you have healthcare and you have social care and you have welfare, and they're all separate. Whereas the argument here is that those things are all public health. A housing crisis is a public health crisis. The homelessness crisis is a public health crisis, that sort of thing. And related to this article, that climate change is also a public health crisis. So yeah, there's a whole, and that's just like a really quick look at it. I'm sure if you went into it more, and for people who know about it more, there would be a whole lot more problems and a lot more reasons as to why that's so hard. I bet you a lot of it is money. A sad amount will be money, and people who want to keep money and people who want to make money, driving the decisions around what happens in relation to healthcare. Also just people who are racist bigots. Spare a thought for the racist bigots who don't want healthcare to be given to certain people, because they are awful. Anyway, on that lovely note, such ecological this is timely. Such ecological politics also finds common cause with much can't speak today. Indigenous and post-development scholarship, not least because the ecologically destructive aspects of modernity appear all too obvious to those Indigenous and other scholars, for whom animist reciprocity with the natural world may still remain a vividly experienced reality. And that's that personification relationship, isn't it? And that animist is the more correct word. I'm just going to write animist reciprocity in Indigenous. I'm just going to write that because I know what that means. We are almost off this page, at which point I can give a thumbs up and let anyone who's muted back. It's just Western modernity needs to learn from non-modern and Indigenous cultures. Yes, we do. There is a beautiful, beautiful book. Where is it? It's like one of my favourite books I read for uni last year. It's called The Scalpel and the Silver Bear. I cannot remember the name of the author, but it is a memoir of an Indigenous woman who becomes a Western-trained doctor, and her attempt to reconcile her cultural heritage and beliefs with a system that is built to tear them down, effectively. It's a really, really beautiful memoir. It's haunting and horrible and joyful and wonderful all at the same time, and I would very much recommend it. Yeah, a more humane society where our oneness with the earth is positive for the earth as well as humans. I like that quote. And that is a quote from Pickren. It's on page 3. Okay. The arts have a crucial role to play in that we need a change which involves culture going down to its roots. That's a lovely phrase. This is the profound task of art, to find seeds of transcendence deep in the dark and minding earth. Okay, I'm going to scroll this down here, and then I'm going to give a thumbs up, and I'm going to say in chat, that it is safe to unmute. Had to mute for triggers. With our lovely emote, which I drew myself. It's the last paragraph. If Griffiths is right, then ecologically dimensioned healthcare need not be solely a matter of privatisation, belt tightening, or simply less. For once we begin to expand our conceptions of care towards convivial fellowship with the other than human beings with whom we share our destiny on the earth, maybe we will make a happy discovery that, in so doing, we also expand the compass of our lived experience of wealth, well-being, and what it might mean to be fully human. That's lovely. I really like that. Alright, I'm gonna hop us over to here. And I'm just gonna process my thoughts on this article for a minute, whilst I'm not gonna get into discussing it too extensively, because obviously I'll be doing that on Monday. I just want to think about it and process it a bit. I can speak, because I think I've got to stop yanking on this cord. I'll get there. Just bear with me. I think my main problem with it, I love the positive thinking within it and the optimistic thinking within it, and I think I agree with the idea that we need to turn towards that kind of positive thinking. I think I just worry, and I'm concerned that the article doesn't give enough space to how difficult that would be. It does mention it. I think it makes it clear that, you know, the author is aware of that difficulty and of the space between what we were talking about with being able to imagine that future and being able to imagine that future becoming real. Especially because in order to do this, you are talking about really radical change in how we function economically, because of all of that privatization and the obsession with gathering more money, and how much money relates to power. And I worry that that whilst this is a lovely take, it's just unrealistic. And I don't know whether I'm thinking that because, as it says, like, we've been delivered the, you know, the negative, here are the facts about climate change view for a while, and I do, you know, believe them is the first thing I need to say. I do believe them and take them seriously, and there's a lot that I do to make my ecological impact on the world as positive as I can, even though I know it's negative. I'll give you some examples. Our energy supplier is 100% renewable energy, for example. We are careful about recycling things, we compost things, we try where possible to not use as much like packaging and stuff, but the difficulty is, and this is one of my other concerns, that it is not mentioned here, and I think could have been, it didn't need to be a big discussion, but I think should have been mentioned at all. There are elements of the movement for ecological improvement and sustainability that are fundamentally ableist. I'm going to talk about straws. So, in the same way that, and veganism actually, and as someone who is vegan and doesn't use disposable straws and is disabled, I'm a weird crossover. I don't have a need based on my disability to use plastic straws, but there are people that literally cannot eat or drink if they don't use straws. and they need to use them, and there are elements of the anti-straw movement that have become very all or nothing effectively and refuse to see the complexity, and in doing so become very ableist. There are elements of the vegan movement that are the same. There are people who medically cannot eat a vegan diet for various reasons. I'm only able to because there's a massive pile of supplements over there, because the 2 vitamins I have a really severe deficiency in, that deficiency is made worse by the fact that I can't go outside, a lot of which is not pandemic related and is related to my mental illness, and the fact that I don't get a lot of omegas or B12 in my diet, so I take those as well. I feel like this article could have mentioned the ableist dimension to how we conceive of our response to climate change, and the attempt within the disability community and disability studies to fight back against that. And it's I think that's a weakness that it didn't cover that in something that was otherwise so good at thinking holistically about humanity. Yeah, I think those are my 2 main concerns with it. I do love and take a lot of hope from the hope within it. I just have that alongside a lot of skepticism that it would ever be possible. Certainly in our lifetimes, anyway. Just a happy note. We're not going to end there, don't worry. I'm not going to end by saying that I don't think that we can actually save the planet. Thank you. I really like the emote too. I'm really pleased with it. I tried a bunch of different options, but that's I really like that one. So what I will finish by doing is talking about what I will be doing next week, because obviously I don't stream on Monday or Tuesday at the moment. We're gonna do another, like, I think I'm gonna do a month or so of reliably doing Wednesday and Friday, and then I'll think about, and I want to get to the point where I'm doing 2 hours every time, with some exceptions. You know, if I'm in a flare, I'm not gonna push myself to do 2 hours, but generally I want to do that if I'm able. So, but as mentioned, I'm gonna get rid of those fucking Tai Chi lessons from my, this and all following events can go. So I will go to my reading group on Monday. Other than that, on Monday and Tuesday, that's the only thing I'm gonna do study-wise. I'm basically gonna have a nice long weekend from now until the end of Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we will come back, and in that stream, we're going to first of all put together what our research questions are. Actually, hold on, I'm going to move you over to Notion. Wow, it actually turned up for the first time. I add you as a friend on Twitch so you can see whenever you're live. You keep your notifications off. So you can enable notifications for single. It's a bit annoying. What you actually have to do is go in and turn notifications off for all of the other places you follow. I don't friend people on Twitch. It's not a function I use, I'm afraid. But you can have notifications for individual streams. That's something I do as well. When I follow someone, I sometimes forget this, but generally when I follow someone, I turn the notifications off, and then I have notifications for the streamers that I follow, like, really closely, rather than everyone that I follow on Twitch, which would be overwhelming because there's quite a lot of them. I need to actually go through and clear some out again, because I followed a bunch of people and forgot to tick that box. So that's an annoyance. I wish you could, like, manage it in an easier way. But yeah, so Wednesday, the first thing we will do is we'll go through these research questions. This is some of them, like, we've got sketched out already. I want to make sure that's all of them. And I want to put them into a format where I can then be referring to that list whilst reading. So that's the first thing we're going to do. depending on how long that takes, we will then potentially, I love my description here, we will potentially also start thinking about where the fuck I'm going to start with video games. Am I going to start just by doing the literature review? Am I going to do that alongside primary source review, aka playing games? I'm going to play games on Twitch. I know it's weird. So we'll then think about that and what am I doing in what order. I've put that on the Friday, but we may end up doing that like on the same day. I suspect we'll probably do them on the same day, so actually I'm just going to put them like there. And in fact, if I put them both on now, then we'll be planning and we'll know what we do, what we are doing. And then I'll put that to the 11th, because we will then start the video game stuff from the 11th. And we will be into deep diving. So realistically, what I'm going to be doing on stream for a while is either reading or playing games. Again, some of the stuff I'm able to read, I will be able to read like with you, and some of it I won't. But we'll see. I'll still be able to read in your presence and talk about what I'm reading. Either way. So yeah, that's the plan for next week. Is to do that. Obviously, I'm not seeing my supervisor for a few more weeks. So I'll have some time to get some work done. And one of the things we want to think about when I'm planning, and I was talking about this yesterday in mentoring, I want to make sure that I have some goalposts and some milestones on the way. So I know, for example, that ultimately I want to end up with about 5,000 words about video games. I know there are some things that I'm going to need to do regardless. I am, for example, going to need to write a bit of an introduction to the history of mental illness in video games. I know that's a thing I'm going to need to do. So when we're planning, we can write that down as something. I know I'm going to have to explain a bit of the history of the technological development in video games. So especially with the development of VR and things like that make a more immersive experience. And sort of, the history of video games in general in that sense. And how that then impacts on the history of mental illness in video games. I know those things are going to need to happen. I know I'm going to need to read around all of these things. Come on, reading list, you can do it. I know there's a lot of things in you. I'll read all these articles in here, because these are the ones that I know are directly related, and then we'll start sort of going off from them. That'll be the literature review part. But what I want to make sure is that I break that down a bit. Not so that I strictly hold myself to it, but so that I have an idea. So, for example, if I know I need 5,000 words and I know I want to do that in 3 months, we work out how many words I need a month. It's going to be a weird number because 5 does not divide easily into 3. And I'm making it, although I've got more than 6 months until November, which is when my probation review is, I'm gonna do it in 3-month blocks because that gives me some space. Obviously, I should be taking holiday periodically, as I'm about to do. There may be periods if I have a longer flare. For example, if I have a week-long flare and I'm not able to do any studying, that gives me some time for that. It's something that I recommend anyone do actually, whether you are disabled or not, but especially if you are disabled and you're studying and you're doing something like this where you've got a long span of time and you are in charge of your schedule, just have an extra few weeks, few months, whatever it is, because you will need that. And I did that for my dissertation, and I used that time because I had, I had a flare where I couldn't use my hands for a week, like, and that meant I didn't have to worry. I'm still worried, just to be clear. I didn't have to worry because I knew I had that extra time built in. So yeah, that sort of milestone is what I want to put in there, and we'll put that in. So there is a view, there's a calendar view for this as well. So we can put in here the like sort of reminders effectively. And I think I can then link them with my Google Calendar. Maybe I'll look into doing that, because I don't show my Google Calendar publicly because it's got private stuff in. But having this in here means that we can then look at this together. So yeah, I might put something at the end of March that says, hey, you should have, what is it going to be? It's going to be like 1,700 words or something. You should have this many words by now, and then I can have a plan for, like, I want that bit to be the first history bit, and then I want the next bit to be the second history bit, or that sort of thing. So that, and then I'll do the same thing with interactive novels when we get to that. I think that's actually going to be quite easy, that word count number. I think I'll probably do more than that. I don't think it will be a problem, because 1,700 words is going to go really quickly if I'm having to explain the history of video games. But bear in mind that my thesis has to be 100,000. I'm only required to produce 10,000 by my probation review. Sorry if you could hear my stomach rumbling. I'm quite hungry. Yeah, I'm required to have 10,000 words to show for my probation review, but realistically I want more than that, because otherwise I'm going to have to write 45,000 words next year and 45,000 words the year after. So I'm not going to like make all my numbers way higher suddenly, but I will bear in mind that doing more is okay, and it's not like, oh god, I've done 5,000 instead of 1,700, what will I do? That's not a problem. So yeah, that's the plan. In the meantime, I'm going to go on holiday, as one does right now, which is to say, I'm just gonna close Outlook for a few days, and I'm just not gonna do any studying. But yeah, so we will leave it there. One of the things I will do is I will sort all the YouTube uploads out. I will try and do that on Wednesday before I stream. I know I'm behind with those. As I mentioned, I can't contractually. You're not allowed to share VODs from Twitch elsewhere for 24 hours after the stream. So I have to wait a bit to do it anyway, which then means I forget. So I've got all the recordings. I'll make sure that's all caught up on Wednesday. But I thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend and beginning of next week. And I will see all of you on Wednesday, and we will really start my PhD now. So yeah, thank you for coming. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you soon. Bye.